Well, as we've mentioned, the Amtrak engineer at the center of Tuesday's derailment there in Philadelphia is recovering from head injuries, and he says he has no memory of the crash.
So we want to take a closer look now at the likelihood of memory loss with head injuries. Joining us now is Dr. Jill McCabe, the medical director of the Concussion Clinic of Inova Loudoun Hospital. Dr. McCabe, thanks for coming in and sharing some knowledge with us on this. Just how common is it for people to lose memory if they have a head injury like a concussion?
Well, memory loss is actually pretty common with a concussion. It just depends on how long that lasts. Many people with concussion will have a brief period of memory loss, either just before or after the injury occurs.
We hear about these kind of things. You know, you talk about TV shows and soap operas, and people get amnesia all the time, and they forget huge parts of their lives. But it seems in reality that might not happen quite as often. In this situation, I mean, is there any way to speculate on how long it would take for memory to come back?
It's very difficult to predict. Everybody's recovery with concussion is different, and that's something that there's a lot of study on right now, trying to understand how people will recover from concussion. But it's not uncommon at all for people to never remember the events just around the time of injury.
Would that be the short-term memory stuff? That would be the stuff that would be most impacted by a concussion?
That's true. What's going to be most impacted is what happened right before and right after the time of injury.
Interesting. So how long does this typically last? Or does it depend upon how, I don't know, how heavily impacted the brain is?
It doesn't necessarily depend on how heavily impacted the brain is, but it's usually a brief period of loss of memory. So most of the time the loss of memory is for a short period, maybe 10 or 15 minutes before or after, sometimes even hours, rarely longer than that.
And they've said, obviously, this was such a catastrophic accident, and that potentially that first car that he may have flipped multiple times, he has staples in his head. I mean, this is obviously a severe injury. Would that affect the amount of time for the memory loss?
Absolutely. If there's something more than just a simple concussion, memory loss can be much more severe. With a simple concussion, it's less likely to be as prolonged. But with a more severe injury, like an injury with a bleed or fracture to the skull, it could be a longer period of amnesia.
What about, sorry to cut you off like that, but it just occurred to me, what about the age of the person suffering them? Because, you know, we've seen kids who've been injured on playgrounds and they bounce back. I've seen football players who had concussions, and I played basketball with guys who have. And it seems like there's no rhyme or reason about how they're affected. So is there a difference between people who are older versus younger?
Well, I spend a lot of time taking care of children with concussion, so I have a lot of experience in that area. And I find that there doesn't seem to be a big difference between children and adults. They both can have amnesia around the time of the event.
Interesting. Interesting.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Dr. Jill McCabe, appreciate it.
Hey, thank you so much for inviting me.
We appreciate it.
Be careful walking on here. We don't want you to
Definitely.
bump anything.
I need to remember everything. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.